let me just begin by welcoming everyone to the Center for Faith and Family webinar. This is our first, as if we had to explain that to you. And, I want to give Lindsay a lot of credit. She worked really, really hard to make this thing work, and we've tested it and everything was fine. So who knows what the issue is. But we're thankful that Arlene is with us. And Lindsay, I'm going to let you introduce Arlene to us as we get started.
I am thrilled to introduce Arlene tonight and thrilled to have each of you with us. Thank you so much for being here. Arlene wrote this in a recent article. She said, more happiness in your home, more closeness to God, your family and friends, more purpose, less screen time. She wants more for you. Arlene has been honored to speak, write books, and appear on several media outlets like The Today Show, Wall Street Journal, Focus on the Family, Fox and Friends, TLC's Homemade Simple, Family Life Today, and the 700 Club. She's also the host of the Happy Home podcast and has been on the writing team for Proverbs 31 Ministries and Girlfriends in God. She earned her BA from Biola University and an MA from Regent University. And before becoming a speaker and author, she served as features reporter for the 700 Club and associate director for Turning Point with David Jeremiah. Her happy place is with her husband of more than 23 years, James, and their 3 children, Ethan, Noel, and Lucy. They live in San Diego with their golden doodle named Winston. So Arlene, we're thrilled to have you here today and to hear more about how we can come alongside the kids that we love so much in all of the screen time that they may be having, and how we can transfer our energies towards a proactive approach with these 5 social skills. So attendees, as you guys listen in, be thinking of any questions that you might have, and you can put them into our Q&A question and answer thread that we have going for any questions for at the end of Arlene's presentation. So Arlene, thank you again for being with us.
It's so great to be with you all. So thank you so much. I feel like there's a silver lining in this. So you know how in technology, we're wondering like what is going on with our kids and all these, and see how obviously when things go wrong, that's part of it, but it's also how they're being trained to learn. It's like, oh, if I don't see it in Technicolor, if something doesn't change in 2 seconds, like I'm out. So you need to have one of the A+ skills to stick with me right now, and that's the A+ skill of attention, And so I'm going to go through 5 A+ relational skills that your kids need. But before I do that, let me paint you a picture of why it is so hard to get our kids off screens, because you wonder like, wait a minute, this is not like the TV of yesterday. This is not like, if you remember, like Atari, like this is not like that. So what's going on? So my son, Ethan, when he was about 5 years old, he got this amazing gift, and it was a bag of peppermint Oreo cookies when it was Christmas, and he got it from his cousin. And I, as a good mom, said to him, no, Ethan, these are not healthy. So I've got to put these on the top shelf. And when you want them, I will give you a few. And he's like, okay, Mom. Well, guess what I did? I'm writing late at night. I'm thinking about these peppermint Oreo cookies. I cannot stop thinking about them. And I'm like, he's a kid. He's 5. He has no idea how many of those cookies are in the bag. I will just take a few. And my friends, I am so sorry to tell you that I took 2, and then I took 3, and then I went through 1 row, and then I went to 2 rows. And then before I knew it, I'd eaten his entire Christmas present. And I thought, well, you know what? He probably forgot. I'm really hoping he forgot. But at Valentine's Day, he says to me, Mom, I'd like some of those Oreo cookies. And I had to say to him, I ate them. And he was like, Mom, you ate my present? This is awful. And I was like, I had no control. I had no control. I just couldn't help myself. I was alone and I wanted it. And my friends, that is how kids are with screens. No matter how good their intentions are, no matter how many limits you have placed on it, if you put a tablet, a phone, a computer that they have access to for a child, and think to yourself, oh, they'll be able to just handle watching a few minutes and then going to something else. It's like me with the peppermint Oreo cookies, I just could not help myself, because the truth is we are not watching our kids 24 hours a day. And so I like to think of this as digital vegetables and digital candy. And right now, for sure, you are having a digital vegetable right now, because you're not going to get addicted to this. I don't think at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd be like, oh, I want to listen to Arlene's talk again about those 5 A+ skills. That was amazing. I'm going to listen again, right? So the digital vegetables, that's when your child is learning Spanish on YouTube, or they're learning how to change the oil in the car, or they're learning how to draw. Like, it's something that they don't get in trouble for, and that you're like, that's actually helpful in the real world. That is a digital vegetable. And we get devices because of the digital vegetables, like GPS and things like this, and being able to get in touch with each other. But ask the average child in America, what are you doing, child of mine? They're not like, oh, I am learning about this missionary overseas. Or they're not saying things like, oh, I am, learning a Bible verse right now, right? They are doing other things that are distracting. So we need to understand, just like in the real world, if there were candy dishes all around your house, picture Halloween, but every day of the year. If there's candy all over the house, your kids are going to consume it. And the more our kids are on electronics, the more they are not going to be able to do the emotional, relational skills, because they don't have time to practice them. So in the book Screen Kids, which is co-authored with someone you've probably never heard of, ha ha ha, Dr. Gary Chapman. So he is the author of the 5 Love Languages. Thank you, Leon, for this lovely visual. So in the book Screen Kids, we outline, what's happening in the brain, and, why this is important. So all those things can be found in the book. But for the purposes of tonight, we are looking at, okay, what are the 5 A+ skills that our kids need in this Candyland world to be a responsible, good, loving Christian adult? And so we know about the A+ skills of education, right? Like, everyone's all into the A's of college and those kinds of, got to get you into college and get those A+. But it's at the end of your life, you're not going to be asked like, oh, where did you go to college? And what was your GPA, right? It's like, it will not matter even by your 50s or 60s, it doesn't really matter. What's going to matter is, who do you love? Who loves you? What kind of contribution have you been able to give to others? And that's all relational. And so our kids might be book smart, but they're not relational smart. And technology really supercharges that. So the 5 A+ skills, I'm going to say them, and then I'm going to explain them. So you can get out your paper and pen. You can type this on your computer. They are affection, the ability to give and receive love; appreciation, a kid that says thank you; anger management, like, I'm really mad, but I am able to manage this; apology, I know how to repair relationships; and attention, what you're doing right now, I can take my wandering attention and I can focus. So these, can you imagine if you have a child who is affectionate, who is appreciative, who knows how to manage anger, who apologizes, and who can pay attention, that this is the kid that the youth pastor or the children's pastor is like, oh my word, I love your kid. They're so nice. And the teacher's like, oh my word, this kid says thank you and like listens. This is amazing, So let's look at the first one, affection. So if you think of the 5 love languages of Dr. Gary Chapman, let's say your child loves physical touch. My daughter Lucy, when she was 2, she would come into my room and at 6 o'clock in the morning with her arms outstretched, huggy, huggy. She wanted a hug, physical touch. Well, guess what? When we have tablets and we have video games and we're all on our devices, what happens? We're not really snuggling up to each other or hugging. Most of us, if our kid's playing a video game, we're not like, oh, let me sit real close to you and watch you play your video game and hug. No, you're like, oh, you're on a game, I'm out of here. And the physical presence then is muted. If your child's love language is words, let's say, they just want to hear you talk to them. They want to hear you praise them. But we've got a TV on the background. We're looking at YouTube. We're in the grocery store and we're on a tablet instead of talking. Then they're missing those opportunities for you to talk. And so we have to think like, how do our children receive affection, and how does technology damper that And how can we get past that, right? So think about in technology, things are disembodied. What does that mean? It means they're not in person. It's not in someone's presence, right? You're not physically with somebody. So if you are texting someone, this is totally disembodied. So all you're doing is texting and seeing little letters on the page, but you don't see the person's eyes. You don't see the way they respond. There's zero body language. So even though we're so advanced technologically, in terms of how we give affection to each other, we're way behind, because if a child is trained just on screens, then when they're 20 and someone like in real life looks like confused or concerned, that young adult has no idea what that expression is, because that is not an emoji that is like seen, right? So it's super important to realize, wait a minute, my child needs embodied interactions where they see someone face to face and they see disappointment and they see joy and they see curiosity. All of those things are really necessary for love and affection. You know, when I was falling in love with my husband, he looked in my eyes so deeply on a date that he said to me, "Do you know what I see when I look in your eyes?" I said, "What do you see?" He said, "I see the letters AV. Your contact lenses say AV." And I was like, "No way. You look so," he looked so deeply that he saw that. That was affection, right? You notice that. Well, what is it like today? People, we don't notice much anymore because we're looking down at our screens. And if our kids are down at the screens too much, then the skill of affection, looking at each other in the eyes, eye contact, all of that is being lost. So you really have to strengthen affection by eye contact, being in real time with real people, putting your kids with real other kids and having them play unsupervised and just let them play and learn how to show affection and be kind to one another. That's so important. So affection. The second A is appreciation. And I want you to think of this as a gratitude muscle, that in the same way a muscle can atrophy, like if your bicep, if you never move your arm for 10 years, you're not going to be able to do anything. You've got to move that arm to get them exercise. And the same thing, if a child never says thank you, never is told to say thank you, never tries to think of things to be grateful themselves, that muscle is going to be super atrophied, and your child will be very not nice to be with. Okay, so think of like the birthday party. You've thrown a birthday party, you've done all these things, and no one says thank you. Instead, they say, "She got a bigger goodie bag than me. He got the Three Musketeers. I didn't get one of those. I want one of those." And this is why kids have a bad reputation. Like, people are like, "We don't want to have kids. They're like bratty and they act this way." It is largely because many of them have lost the art of appreciation, the art of being the one child in the party that looks at the host and says, "Thank you very much. This was a very nice party," right? Can you imagine? Like, they'd be like, "Who is this child? And what God has raised you?" I mean that jokingly, that it's so rare now that a kid can show that kind of gratitude, and yet it's so simple. So this is teaching your kids thank you, insisting on it. Thank you. You need to say thank you. When they receive something from grandma, we're going to write grandma a thank you note. And really, that old-fashioned letter, we're going to send a thank you note to your teacher so that you will learn gratitude. What they found, they've done research at Indiana University. This is just one study of many. People who suffer from anxiety and depression, which is a large amount of the population, young population right now, one of the best antidotes to that is gratitude. So they had them do an exercise where they just spent 20 minutes writing a thank you letter to someone. And they could either really send it to the person, but they didn't have to. It was just the exercise of writing and being thankful. And they did this for 20 minutes, and they only did this for 1 hour. So they did it for 3 weeks in a row. And what they found was those people improved so amazingly from their anxiety and depression. And even months later, they looked at the brain scans and they still were activating those little portions in the brain that lit up in a good way for being grateful. Dr. Susan Ferguson, she's a neuroscientist at Seattle Children's, and she says that research shows that gratitude is linked with feelings of reward, improved sleep, decreased depression and anxiety. There are measurable benefits to mental health and interpersonal relationships when humans feel gratitude, end quote. So science is showing us, hey, when you're grateful, you are going to be less sick. You're going to be less depressed, less anxious. And, and the Bible obviously is filled with give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Remember the works of the Lord and give thanks, for this is the will of God, to give thanks through, through all these things. So for us to realize, okay, as parents, this is an A+ skill that's so important. We need to help our kids to be more appreciative. And one way to do that, honestly, is by not giving them every single thing they want. Because when they get every single thing they want, then it's like, what next? What next? They get entitled, right? I want this game, you buy it for them. I want this new phone, you buy it for them. I need my own iPad, you get it for them. What do they learn? I am like, my parents are like a vending machine. I can just ask them for things and they give them to me, and I'm entitled because the screens, think about it. The screens, remember how, maybe some of you are too young to remember this, but you used to go to the library and you'd have to like find an index card, and then you have to take the index card and then you have to go find that book, right? It was a bit of a process to find out who Abraham Lincoln was. Well, today, all the kid has to do is type in Abraham Lincoln, put it in ChatGPT, and now they've got like an essay about Abraham Lincoln. They don't even have to do anything. So technology teaches our kids that everything is very instant. And if there's any kind of effort involved, that's bad. So they're very ungrateful. Like, this is not soon enough. Like, why isn't this fast enough? And then think of it, instead of just having one option of things to watch. Let's, old TV, it was like you either liked it or you didn't like it, so you turned it off. Now they have a gazillion things they can watch at any time. And so they're never bored. They never have to watch something they don't want to watch, and they can have it on demand. So this on-demand mindset has crept into our child's character, and they go to God and they say, God, I need this. And then if God doesn't give it in a week, they're like, well, this God thing doesn't work, right? They're not appreciative because they've learned that everything comes fast in life and I get everything I want. So a great way to help your kids to be more grateful is to say no. Can I have this? No, you can't. Can I have this new iPad? No, I'm sorry. Can I have this phone? Well, when you earn the money for it and you can pay for the bill, you know what I mean? So make them wait for things. And then when they own them, they will be more grateful for them. So affection, appreciation, and the next one is anger management. All right. How many of you out there, it's like, oh, I have such a lovely, wonderful child until they play that video game and I tell them to stop. And when they play the video game and I tell them to stop, it's like, whoa, what kind of monster has come out of my child, right? So there really is something there for you to notice. Is my child, more angry than usual? And why? And then look, is it because they're on social media more? Is it because they are on video games more? Did they go to somebody's house and play a video game? Like, what happened in their life to make them that way? And to understand, Dr. Gary Chapman has he's got also a book on anger. And one thing he has taught us, and through the book Screen Kids, you'll read about it, is there is good anger and there is bad anger. So anger can be very good, righteous anger, like for you to be like, I am angry that these tech companies have kind of swooped in on our kids, and that's a good reason to have anger. So when your child is angry, you can ask them, okay, is this good anger or bad anger? And they're gonna be like, what do you mean by that? Well, good anger, like, tell me, what is the wrong that happened? So usually there's like a moral code that was broken, or a rule that was broken, or somebody didn't live up to what they promised, right? So ask what happened. And if a rule was broken, a moral code was broken, that makes sense. Oh, my word, your sister stole that from you. You should be angry, and we will make her have restitution to pay you back. But if it's, oh, I'm angry because my teacher says I have to do this homework and my teacher's so dumb. Well, I'm sorry, no real wrong has occurred there. And that's not really, you don't have a great reason to be angry. And just to help our kids understand that you can be angry for good reasons, but you're also going to be angry for bad reasons. When they are yelling, when they are mad. So your child is either going to act out with words. They're going to, wow, I can't believe you. I hate you, right? Or they're going to be physical. They're going to, they're going to break something. They're going to punch a wall. So to realize, okay, if it's words that my kid is going for, then you just let them yell, let them do the thing, but you don't yell back. You don't, a soft answer turns away wrath. And then later in that moment, after you yell, okay, right? Okay, we will talk about this later. Maybe you can't talk about it now because you're going to yell back too. We will talk about this later. And then that will get addressed later. Or if they're real, like need to act out, then it could be like, honestly, I know people that have bought punching bags outside to be like, go punch the punching bag and come back in 5 minutes, or go run around the house twice and then come back and talk to me. That you just need to run off those steams and have your child answer the question, finish the question, I am angry because, and then listen. And if there's a real reason there, then act, right? It's good. You want to respond. But if it's just, I'm angry because I didn't get my own way, then we're helping our child to understand that's going to happen. And it's going to happen in life. And you're just going to have to realize, oh, everything, sometimes I don't get my way. Dr. Chapman has a wonderful thing about just like a little a thing that you can say is have your child like write down on a little card. I don't want to talk right now because I'm too angry, but later on, can we talk? And it's kind of like a little pass that you can give to each other, that you realize like, okay, we need to talk about this, but now is not the right moment. And if you see that violent video games, that is adding to it, I know it takes courage, but think about this. If you just let it continue as it is, what's that going to be like for your child? But if you say, okay, you've been playing this game and we see you're becoming more violent, more aggressive, more angry, we're going to do an experiment. We're going to put a pause on it for a month and then we'll get back to it. Oh, are they going to sing your praises? Of course, you're going to see the fury. You're going to see the wrath unload. And you can say, you might think I'm the strictest parent, the meanest parent. Just say all the things that they're going to say. I'm the strictest parent, meanest parent. You're going to slam the door. You're probably not going to talk to me for 3 days. You're going to hate me. And you know what? I love you and I care about you. And it's my job to protect you. And that's why I'm still doing it. And you have to be willing to make your child angry in the moment to help your child, right? Not be on such a path where they're angry so much, because what is social media fueled on? So much of it is anger and hate and people just trying to get people to fight, because fighting is very engaging. And to realize, wait a minute, I don't want anger to be fueled in my child, so I'm willing to pull back on the devices. So we have affection, appreciation, anger management, and now we move to the 4th A+ skill, and you guys are doing so good listening, is apology. And apology is the ability to repair relationships, right? Without apologies, you just don't get by in life. Like if you just keep blaming, it was not my fault, it's her fault. After a while, people are going to be like, I do not want to be friends with you because you don't think anything's your fault. And what is happening in today's child, tween, and teen? Okay, get this. This is crazy. I just read in Jonathan Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation, which is very good and I highly recommend it. And it's about the rewiring of childhood because of smartphones. And one thing he says is our kids need to be in groups where it's hard to get into the group and it's hard to get out of the group. And what he means by that is, let's say you've had a best friend since kindergarten, and now you're in 6th grade and you've been their friend for that long, from kindergarten. It was hard to get to that level of friendship, but it's very hard to get out because you want to repair that relationship. So let's say you've been friends from kindergarten to 6th grade, you get in a fight, you're going to figure out a way to apologize and restore that relationship, because that was a high bar to get to that level in the relationship, and it's hard to exit that relationship. Well, what is the online world? We give our kids phones because they tell us they'll be left out if they're not on it. But guess what happens online? You jump in, you jump out. There's no cost. It's super easy to enter any kind of chat room, any kind of group, and it's super easy to anonymously step out. And so our kids are not really learning how to apologize, because when something happens, they're just like, okay, I guess I will no longer communicate with that person. And it's just like the person's gone, like they don't exist. And so we need to help our kids understand, we need to help them have valuable relationships that they want to repair the relationship. And it can start very young. Dr. Chapman in his book talks about his little son, Derek, and how he's like, look, my cookie broke. I want a new cookie, Dad. And Dr. Chapman very much wanted him to say, no, Derek, the cookie didn't just break. And oh, yeah, I broke the cookie. Well, good. That's how you say it. I broke the cookie, Dad. I want a new cookie. So it's even at a young age helping kids to take responsibility. Social media says, don't take responsibility. It's someone else's fault. You are the victim. And kids are growing up thinking, oh, it's your fault. I am the victim. And you need to help them go, no, 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 no. It is your fault. And I will take responsibility for the things I do. But guess what? There's forgiveness and restoration on the other side of that. So apology, Dr. Chapman loves the number 5, right? 5 love languages. He also has 5 languages of apology. He actually has a book about apology. But let me give these 5 languages, because it's not for, as your kids get older, it's not enough to just go, I'm sorry. Especially if it's like, I'm sorry. And then you're like, you're not really sorry. So I'm sorry. That's step 1. It's I regret that. I was wrong. That's step 2. I'm taking responsibility. What can I do to make it right? That's step 3. That's restitution. I'll try not to do it again. That's step 4. Repentance. Will you forgive me? That's step 5. Requesting forgiveness. So for a young child, you could probably get them through the first 2 steps. I'm sorry, I was wrong. As kids get older, I'm sorry, I was wrong. What can I do to make it right? And they can glue back the project. They can earn a few dollars to pay back somebody for whatever they took or whatever it is, right? And then as they get older, they add, I'll try not to do it again, like a change of behavior. That was bad. I'll try not to do it again. And as they get older, will you forgive me? And what a beautiful way. Can you imagine if you have children who grow up with this kind of skill that they've practiced? And that's what the phones are taking away, is because they're not playing enough together in real life to practice these kinds of things. So apology. And then the last thing, the last 5 A plus skill is attention, which you guys all get a gold star. I'm so proud of you. So you have paid attention. And I tell you what, ask and talk to any teacher, right? And they'll be like, oh my word. You know, I like sometimes to ask teachers, what's it like teaching today versus 10, 15 years ago? And they're just, oh my goodness, they'll say there's no comparison at all. That a teacher 15 years ago could have said, sit in a circle. And a teacher today says, sit in a circle. And by the time they've got half the circle done, the other half is broken. And then you guys sit down the other. And it's just like, I'm just spending all morning making them sit in a circle. So it's like, what has happened? And so we need to understand that, we used to watch the TV of Mr. Rogers. Watch Mr. Rogers, right? And wow, you'll be like, wow, this is really slow. Kind of like what I've been doing, but just with a face, but just a talking head the whole time, right? And he talks very slow and very methodically and very calmly. It's lovely. But guess what? Watch that and then watch SpongeBob, and you will understand completely like what is wrong with people's attention. Because in SpongeBob, it's like everything's colorful and it blows up and it moves and it changes, and all of this is done on purpose to hold the child's attention. And basically, what are the things that are being pumped out to kids? What they're training the kids is, you need like a little reward dopamine hit every 8 seconds, and when it doesn't happen, wow, that's super boring and you should probably tap out. So part of our backstory is that our kids went to public school here in San Diego, K through 12, and we didn't give them smartphones. So we didn't give them smartphones, we did not give them social media, and we did not give them video games. So when they got to school, it was actually pretty easy for them to listen to the teacher, because it was like they were used to books and used to Legos, as children, and it was not a big deal. And teachers would always be like, how in the world do your kids pay attention? And I am telling you, my friends, it's not like we were so amazing, or so all we did was replace screen time with reading. Like that's basically, as they were growing up, what they grew up on. And I tell you what, if your kids are readers, they will be able to pay attention. It makes such a big difference. Reading is a really, really good way to strengthen your child's ability to pay attention. Can a child read online? They can. But think about us, like when you read a book, think of how you feel versus when you either read like an article online or even like a e-reader book, because when you're in a book, like there's nothing else to do. You just are in that book and you feel it and you touch it and all those things. But when you're online, it's like, oh, I'm reading this article and I'm already on page 2. Isn't this thing over yet? Like it's just your brain is doing something different and you have all the ads that are competing for your attention. Nicholas Carr, years ago in his book called The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, this is what he says: when we go online, we enter an environment that promotes cursory reading, hurried and distracted thinking, and superficial learning. It's possible to think deeply while surfing the net, just as it's possible to think shallowly while reading a book, but that's not the type of thinking that technology encourages and rewards. So we really have to realize, like, wow, they're growing up in this internet age where everything's very shallow, very quick, and they're not developing the attention skills that they need. You know, I'll have people say, I go to other countries and their school children, the less they're on technology, the more they're able to pay attention. You know, it's like their school children just file in, sit down, and they're just perfectly quiet. And they can listen to you for hours. They can listen to you for a long time because they're used to that. The last thing I want to say about attention is there was a study done by this Harvard PhD named Matt Killingsworth. And he has this idea of the wandering mind that, like right now, right? You're doing your best to listen to me and you're doing such a good job. But many times our mind wanders to, like, if I say what it wanders to, boom, you'll be there, you know, to whatever happening is happening tomorrow. Like what you get it. I don't want to say anything else to give you an idea. But what he found was when they looked at 15,000 people for 80 countries around the world, almost 50% of the time, people are thinking about something else. So if I'm at work, I am thinking about being at home. When I'm at home, I am thinking about something else. And what it is like my daughter, Lucy, she was so funny. She made this comment when she was in 6th grade. So she wasn't allowed to have video games. And she told me, Mom, it's so funny. Like the boys in my class, even though they can't play the video game at school, they are always thinking about the video game. Like they're talking to each other about the video game and they're thinking about the video game and they're thinking how they can become better at the video game. And all of that is happening while they're in school. So it's this idea that it's so hard for kids and adults to pay attention because the internet has taught us. Just think of a business meeting now. If it gets a little bit boring, what happens? Everyone's pulling out their phones and they're looking at their phones because our mind is wandering. We're somewhere else. And what we need to do for kids is not give them that handicap of when they're so entrenched in screens. Then when they become young adults and then adults, etc., then they're always battling that, well, this is kind of slow and boring. I'm sure I could be doing something more exciting. And they're going to pull out their phone and they're going to start scrolling and they're going to start surfing. So my friends, the A+ of school, those are nice. That's nice, academics, but that's not our aim. Our aim is like, how can we have kids of character? How can we have kids who will do good in the world, who will love God, who will love people? And through these A+ skills, it's a good way to just think, okay, how is technology impacting my child's ability to give and receive love, affection? Is it making my child entitled instead of being grateful for the simple things? We want appreciation. Are they becoming so angry because they didn't get as many likes as they wanted, or they're on, someone made them mad online because they said something to them or because of a video game? So, man, maybe I need to pull back that technology because they're so angry. Apology. Can my child say sorry in real life to someone to repair a relationship? And lastly, can my child pay attention in school to a conversation? Can they keep with the conversation and keep the eye contact and listen? Will they be able to sit through a Sunday sermon? All these things, can they strengthen attention? So those are the 5 A+ skills. And I think we're going to open it up to questions. And thank you so much for your using the 5th skill of attention.
Thank you so much, Arlene. And yes, thank you everyone for listening in. And wow, what a lot to digest there and think about. We want to give you guys some time to put in any questions that you might have in the Q&A, and I'm going to answer those. Or I won't answer them. I will share them with Arlene so she can answer them.
Let me ask Arlene a question maybe to get this kick-started. Arlene, so we spoke with you for our podcast last week, and that will air this coming Sunday. So our listeners haven't heard that yet, where you shared a lot of wonderful things with us on that podcast. One of the things that we asked you about was how do we get back if we've gone down a road where we have allowed some of the concerns that you have expressed to take place in the lives of our kids. We've given them the electronic equipment. We've allowed them to play video games, and we're starting to see some of the concerns that you mentioned, getting angry when we ask them to put it away and those kind of things. How do we start to build in some discipline, some guidelines, some rules by which we function as a family? We still have Arlene?
It says that she's here. Arlene? Let's see here. Let me go to our people.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So it
Did you
was
hear-
like it didn't it was grayed out. It wasn't letting me click on it, and then now it
Mm.
clicked on it for me to have the microphone on. I did hear your
Okay.
question. I heard everything you said.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Sorry
good. We're
about
good.
that.
Okay, so that's okay. So let's see. I was trying to. So it's never too late. You know, it's okay. Like right where you're at, this is where we can make a change. The idea would be, whatever change happens, you're probably going to have a very hard short term making the change, but you're looking long term. Like, wait, if we don't make the change now, if we just kind of let it slide the way it is, what is this going to look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 8 years from now? So I think when you have that in view, then you think, okay, we need to like stop the slide right here, and how can we do that? And a lot of it is by using apology. Child of mine, we've allowed you to play this video game. We've given you this phone. We wanted you to feel included with your peers, so we thought we were doing the right thing. But we're noticing you, and we're seeing that these are not good changes, and it's our job to keep you healthy. You are not a bad kid. You are a good kid. This is totally on us as your parents. We are responsible for you. This is not going to be popular with you. We know you're not going to love this, but we are going to take away this, whatever it is, phone, video game, social media, and we're going to do this experiment. And we're just going to do a reset and a do-over, because we don't think it's healthy for you. And when you leave our house, when you're 18 and you're on your own, or whatever, 21, whatever, you can play this game all you want. But while you are living under my roof, I want to give your growing brain a chance, right? So it's couched in this idea that, I know this is unpopular. I'm trying to do my best of what's good for you. I was just talking to a mom of a 10th grader who's on social media, has a lot of anxiety, a girl. And the girl said to the mom, "Mom, why did you let me have this? It's your fault. Why did you give me a phone?" Right? And the mom was saying, "I'm so frustrated because I gave you the phone because you begged me for the phone, and then you were mad at me too." So she's like, "I can't win." And so for us as parents to realize that almost however you slice it, your kid's probably not going to be happy with you in this sense. So you might as well put it in that, be more conservative. Like, you're not going to regret saying, I pulled back on that. You're not going to regret that, but you will regret, oh man, I let him just do that, and now it has just run wild and it's turned into this big problem. And please feel like you're alone, and you feel like you're weird, like maybe you're being oversensitive, but there are other people doing the exact same thing you are doing. You just have to meet each other. So I would even pray that your child has a friend. Like for me, my kids, even though they don't have phones in high school or social media, they've all found friends who will be their friend, even though they don't have those things, So praying that our kids will make and find another way.
What a great response. Thank you, Arlene. We've got another couple questions here. So This kind of sums up a few questions, I would say, is what are the recommended ages and time restrictions you would suggest for screens?
Yes. So, think of from birth to 5, right? 90% of the brain is growing from birth to 5. So if you have your youngest in that age, but then you have older kids, this is actually a really lovely excuse to be like, oh, baby sister can't watch that. Let's put that away and let's do something else instead. Like, it honestly will keep the rest of your kids more innocent and more young. So I almost want to encourage you to use that as an asset and not as a bad thing, because most of us think like, oh man, what are we going to do? The older kids need this, but we've got this younger kid. So 0 to 5, really try to make it minimal. FaceTiming is totally fine. So video chatting, even for babies, pediatrician says that's fine because that's in real time. It's synchronous. They're seeing response. It's face to face. They like it. They say it's fine. And then the baby recognizes the person after a few times. So it's kind of cool. So that is fine. So you can use your phones all day long for video chatting grandma. Good job. Good job. But otherwise, 0 to 5, like maybe between 2 and 5, you might be looking at a half an hour of programming that is quality. And pediatricians always say you should sit there with them so you can talk about it. And I know that's not how you parents were. That's not how we're using that time, but that's what they recommend. And then it used to be like 2 hours or less from 5 on. But because everybody's on screens, the pediatricians I feel like they caved and they just said like, do what's best for you and just try to set limits. So the National Institute of Health, they are following 10,000 kids. And this is something any of our grandmothers could have told us. A huge research project is telling us that what's best for kids is a good night's sleep, which is, upward of 8 hours solid in a row at night, 2 hours or less of digital entertainment, and 1 hour of physical activity. So I think that is a good guideline as your kids grow up, 2 hours or less of digital candy, what I would call it. Now, for some of you listening, like, oh my word, that's way too much. And that's good. You want as, the smallest number possible. But others of you will be like, 2 hours, my word, my kids are average and they're on 7, 8 hours a day. How in the world are we going to get to 2 hours? So then it's more like, hey, how can we like shave off an hour or shave off 2 hours and kind of get closer to that? So I think those are good recommendations. And then having a purpose, right? So not just like scrolling mindlessly, but like, oh, okay, child of mine, you're really into race cars. Great. Why don't you spend half an hour looking at race car stuff and then log off? Just kind of helping your child realize that being intentional really does help. But obviously, it's so hard to stay on track once you're there because all these algorithms are working against you to keep you on longer.
Great. And I just wanted to add one more thought to that question, Arlene. We heard from Sheila, hi Sheila, that she is wanting to cut back on screen time for her 9.5-year-old. So she's looking at, a limit right now of 1 to 2 hours, but wants to get down to 30 minutes. Like, what would you say would be a good next step to help her with that?
And just kind of look at the day, Sheila, and like time block it, like what time is, what are some things that always happen at certain times, and then kind of see what time is left. For Sheila and for everyone, I cannot overstress the importance of just regular mealtime. More and more kids and parents, we're not eating together because we're going from one activity to another. And that's really how we're losing a lot of connection. So really, one of the best things you can do for the A+ skills is make it your goal that as pretty much like on a regular basis, you're having one meal a day together, right? It might be breakfast because maybe everyone's got a weird night schedule, but you kind of all sit at the table at 7 o'clock with your cereal, whatever it is, but really make that a goal of having ideally a dinner time that is every night, or you're getting close to that. So put those things in. And then what are the leftover spots? What's the bedtime? Dr. Chapman I loved it. He was always like, give your kids an early bedtime. Send them to bed with no screens and tell them you can stay awake in your room, but you just can't have any screens in your room. But you're welcome, at 8:30, 9 o'clock, even for the older kids. He was saying, send them to their rooms at 9 o'clock and let them unwind themselves. Let them read books, draw, whatever they want to do, but without screens. So let's say you've put in all those things. This is the bedtime. Here's the meal times. here's whatever the school time is, what time do you have left? And then what's in that leftover time, I don't think you have to overschedule, you know, I don't want you running around to all these things just because you're trying to keep your daughter off of screens, but just kind of like, hey, this will be your dedicated time for the screen time between, 6:30 and 7. And the rest of the time, you've got to, amuse yourself with books or toys or do this or go FaceTime grandma or whatever it is. So look for a rhythm so that your child is getting used to, okay, I play this for a little bit, and then I read for a little bit, and then we have our dinner. And then on Tuesdays, I play a board game. And on Wednesdays, we go to church. And on Thursdays, I like draw or something, you know what I mean? Like a rhythm, so that there are other things. Because you do want to, if you're pulling back screen time, and this is for all of us, you do want to replace it with something else. And I have found the best way to do that is to discover your child's hobbies and interests. And this is good for us as parents to observe our child, to see like, what do they love, and then really support what they love. I have one daughter who loves to draw cars. I have another daughter who loves to crochet animals. So it's like, support these things so that they have these hobbies to do in their downtime.
That is so helpful. And I think that plays into that 5th A, right? Of attention.
Yes. Yeah.
Replacing screen time with different skills and things that they can really put their attention to, even regular time, like meal times and bedtimes. And yeah, that's very good. Okay. We've got just a few more minutes here. And so I want to ask another question from Liz. Hi, Liz. We're glad you're here. She asked, just curious, is there any kind of notes or cheat sheet that summarizes the 5 A+ skills?
That's a good question. I do not have notes or a cheat sheet. Maybe that's a good thing for me to make. But I tell you what, if you just go, I'm trying to think like it's almost like I could. So the short answer is no. That the long answer would be like, well, if you looked at the description of the book, like on Amazon, you know what I mean? If you find things like that, you will find the A+ skills listed, and that would help you out.
Great.
Liz is a teacher, so I'm not surprised at all she asked that
Exactly.
question.
That's a good question. I'm not an educator, so that's why it's like, oh yeah, if I was an educator by tradition, then I'd be like, of course I would have that sheet.
Awesome.
Thank you, Liz, for sharing with your families. That's awesome.
Yeah. And speaking of your book, Arlene, Screen Kids, that Leon and I have loved reading through and discussing on the podcast, and you've mentioned it several times, that you wrote with Dr. Gary Chapman. The Ringhofer family, hi Ringhoffers, they are watching together tonight and listening. They said that they're so excited to read your book. Mom Tiffany says she has a 10, 14, and 15-year-old who also joined on the webinar, and it has been challenging for them to be countercultural in their approach to screens. So it's really affirming to hear the realities of what screen time is and how she's intuitively felt as a mom. So just wanted to share that with you as an encouragement.
That's awesome.
All right, let's see. I think we got one more question here. This one is, let's see, is this, I think, yep, we asked Jenna's, got Jenna's. Hi, Jenna. I don't know if I gave you a shout out earlier. And we've got Sheila here. So she says, how do you get your 13 and 9-year-old to come to the table when they're so over sitting at the table? It's like they're being tortured. Both have some neurodivergence, and especially my oldest is autistic, high functioning. So that's something she was asking through regarding meal times.
Yes.
Any special tips you've had on that, Arlene?
I was going to say, I'm not a specialist in that area. So asking, the medical people that you're working with, that question would be, obviously you've already done that. So I'm almost not, so forgive me if that's like, duh. But I would think your kids are going to get hungry. And honestly, like tying, like, this is how you receive food. You receive food by sitting at the table. So really like cutting out the snacks, cutting out that, like, it's not an option that we just give you food and you can just grab it and then go to your room or go somewhere else and eat it. So like a new thing, and maybe make it fun, like that. Maybe that's not how it's been, but now you're going to do this. So it's called Mom Cafe, or you have like a thing and you wear an apron and you make a big to-do of it, and you say, for the next week and probably every week after, if you want to get food, then you sit right here. This is where it's served. And that's it. And if they sit down, they get the food. And if they don't sit down, they don't get the food. And honestly, again, my pediatrician helping me saying, Arlene, if your child misses a meal, like they're not going to die, like nothing bad is going to happen to them, because we talk about that because it was, in the stage they weren't eating vegetables, then it'd be like, okay, well, whatever, if you won't eat that, then nothing will be served. You have to, it's like kind of like the entrance to everything else. The broccoli comes before the chicken nuggets. And if you don't want that, then there's no chicken. And it's like your kid will not starve. So I think if that's the only way they're going to get food, they're going to come to the table. And you know what? In time, they'll like it. So at first they won't like it, but in a very short time, they're going to be like, oh, I actually like this. So you want to make the table fun. This isn't time to like rules and you guys are doing this wrong, you guys are doing that wrong. No, this is like fun. Like you're complimenting each other, you're appreciating each other, you're asking each other about each other's day and laughing about things and bringing jokes to the table and make it fun for them.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Hey,
I think
Lindsay,
yes,
I think this is a good time for us to give away some books.
I agree. I was just thinking the same thing. All right. I've got some winners here. So I just put everybody's name that is here on this webinar into a randomizer and I spun the wheel.
I love this. The randomizer.
Yes, the randomizer. And we are going to be giving away 3 copies of Arlene's book, Screen Kids. And those 3 copies are going to, drumroll please, Lauren Hansen and Hillary. I don't have a last name, but Hillary was on here. And Sheila Rice. So
Yay.
Those 3 names were picked. So yeah, you will be receiving an email from me with all the details about your book so that we can get that sent to you right away. So congratulations, Lauren, Hillary, and Sheila.
That's awesome.
And yes.
Now, I have to correct something I said earlier about our podcast. And Lindsay knows this about me, that I totally get confused when we're airing particular podcasts because we record them in advance.
Yeah.
So the podcast we did with Arlene actually was released this week, right? So it's already out there. So if you have not gone to our podcast at centerff.com, it's on all the podcast platforms, and want to get more from our conversation that we had about a 40-minute conversation with Arlene prior to this event. There's more out there, so be sure to get that. And Lindsay, we're kind of coming up on the end of our first season of our podcast, aren't we?
We are. This coming Sunday will be our final episode
for this season, and then we're coming back.
Yes, we're coming back. We're not done for good.
In September, right?
Yes, coming back in September. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we would love to have you tune in anytime and catch up, especially on our episode with Arlene that took place last week. And Arlene also has a wonderful podcast, the Happy Home Podcast, and a lot of great resources that she can lead you to from there as well.
And I just put in the chat the link for a Screen Kids movie that it's my kids talking about growing up without screens. And then you'll see my face. So that way we'll just complete the picture. So that's free. And it's just happyhomeuniversity.com and look for the film. And it's a free documentary just of my kids talking about like, okay, I don't have social media. Do I hate my parents? So you can watch it for yourselves.
Great. Well, Arlene, thank you again so much for joining us and for being so flexible with our technical issues. Thank you to each of you that joined us as well. We're so grateful to have you a part of this event, and we will be sending out the recording. So if you want to share that with anybody, you can do so. And Leon, would you like to add any final thoughts and give us a blessing on our way out tonight?
All right. Well, I too am very thankful that you all joined us. Thank you, Arlene, for spending time with us.
My pleasure.
I'm sure things are very beautiful out right now still in San Diego. So I appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Liz is asking, can I post a recording on my work social media for families? That would be absolutely fine.
Fine with me too,
Um,
Liz.
Yeah, in fact, anything that you all can do to get word out to your friends about the podcast and the work we're doing in the Center for Faith and Family, that would be incredible. We would love that. So let me end with doing the blessing that I do with you for my kids at church with you today. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.